Welcome everyone to the webinar. We're going to be covering speed reading techniques in today's session. My name is Paul Nowak. I'm the founder and program director here at Iris Reading. Hope you'll find this session helpful. Actually, I think you will, because we are going to cover a variety of strategies for reading faster and retaining more. So if you're not already familiar with the work that we do here at Iris Reading, we teach essentially study skills, but that umbrella includes topics that include speed reading, comprehension strategies. We also teach students and professionals memorization techniques. So how do you really remember something that you've read? Or what if you have to memorize specific details? And we also teach note-taking, personal productivity. So let's get right into what we're going to be covering. And first of all, I want you to know that we are live streaming this on YouTube and LinkedIn, I believe. So feel free to add messages in the chat or the comments. I'm curious to know where you are listening in from. I'm broadcasting from the Miami area. My hometown is Chicago. I moved to Miami about a year and a half ago. Hope everything is all good by you. As far as the YouTube channel, if you subscribe to it, we will be posting new content on a weekly basis. So if you want to get access to that, make sure you subscribe. Also, today's session has a few handouts that you need to be aware of. And I'm going to post in the chat here where you could find the handouts for today. And that is just irisreading.com/YTS. If you go to that link, that's where you could find all the materials for today's session. And it really just forwards you over to a Dropbox link, and that's where you could find all the PDFs for today's session. So make sure you have access to those. I will have them displayed on my screen during the session, but depending on your screen size, it may or may not be easy or hard for you to read that information. So make sure you have it downloaded. You can print it out if you want. You don't have to, but we're going to use those PDFs to measure our reading speed today and do some exercises. So like I said, we're going to be covering some speed reading techniques, and we'll also talk about comprehension. I don't want to overemphasize speed because we all know that your reading speed doesn't really matter unless you're actually comprehending the material. So one of the first things we'll do is measure your reading speed. So you might know things like, I don't know, your typing speed. Not everyone knows what their reading speed is. You might have an idea of it. Maybe you feel like you read slowly, or maybe you feel like, you know what, I think I read faster than average, or maybe you feel like you're average. We'll find out precisely what that is today, and I'll tell you what the averages are. And we'll also talk today about how to improve your focus. I think all of us have had this challenge where, you get distracted while you're reading, and that could be distractions from our phone. It could be distractions from, I'm operating off of a laptop right now, so it could be like a little ding or some sort of a notification from another application. And then there's just like personal distractions. You ever read a whole page of text and you look up like, I have no clue what I just read this entire time, totally spaced out? That happens. So we need to improve our focus so we can obviously comprehend the material. And if you have better focus, if you can train yourself to improve your focus, that can lead to improvements in your reading speed. So we'll also cover comprehension strategies today and reading on the computer screen. I don't know about you, but I do most of my reading on the screen. Probably like 80% or more of my reading is on the screen. Still there's something about like holding an actual book that I love, but we can't really help it. I'm not going to print out every single thing that I want to read. I read a lot on my phone when it comes to like news. I also have, a Kindle, tablet, laptop, all this screen-based reading. It's something that we can work on. The average person actually reads a little bit slower on the screen. We'll talk about why that is and how to improve it, and how to build up our speed with practice. There are exercises that you can do that can help you improve. We're going to practice some of those exercises today. And reading is a skill just like anything else, and that means you can improve it. And also we got to acknowledge that there's different types of material that we read. You're not always reading easy material. Sometimes you have to read something very complex. So we'll discuss how we approach complex information, something like a textbook or a journal article, for those of you that might be in school, whether it's at the undergrad or graduate level. We also work with high school students as well. We don't do much work with very, very young kids, only because when you're very, very young, you got to build up like the foundational reading skills to build up some level of fluency. Once you get to that level of fluency, and that might happen for some students around the age of 12, Could happen earlier or later, depends. Then you could work on starting to speed up your reading. However, there are some study skills that we teach that could really be applied to, younger kids at the grade school level, specifically some of these memorization techniques that we cover. We're not going to cover it today. We actually have a separate course on that. If you want to dive deep into memorization, if you go to our website, irisreading.com, and click on courses, that's where you can find all of our advanced level courses that go deeply into all these topics: speed reading, note taking, memory, and so on. So as readers, we need to be as efficient as possible in 3 key areas. And those areas are speed, we want to read faster; comprehension, we want to understand the material; and retention, we want to remember what we've read. And I want to draw a distinction between comprehension and retention because there's a subtle difference between them. Most people kind of lump them together as one thing, but they're not. Comprehension is what are you understanding the moment you're actually reading the text in real time, at that present moment. Retention is what do you remember later on? And that could be, an hour later, a day later, a whole year later. Sometimes your comprehension can be good at the moment, but then your retention can be terrible, right? Nobody has a perfect memory. We all forget things. So we work on all these areas. We want to be as efficient as possible in all 3 of these areas. So let's think about how most people tend to read. You see this green dot bouncing around on the screen? Most people, when they read, they kind of do something like this with their eyes. They go word by word. Of course, sometimes we go back. We're like, I didn't understand any of that. Let me read that one more time. And we go through it again. But there's basically a few old reading habits that we got to change if we're going to start reading faster and more efficiently. A few old habits that got to change are, well, actually, before we get into that, when was the last time you learned how to read? If you think about it, last time you may have learned how to read, maybe it was the first time you learned how to read. It's actually kind of weird if you think about it from the standpoint of other things that we learn. Like if I asked you, when was the last time you learned history? It wasn't the first time you learned history, right? If I asked you, when was the last time you learned something in the sciences? Again, it wasn't when you were 4 or 5 or 6 years old. Same thing goes with mathematics. That knowledge kind of builds up over time through your academic career. Unfortunately, reading, which underlies most of the learning that we do, reading is one of those things that's taught to most people one time in their life. When they're young, when we're kids, like 4 or 5, 6 years old, that's when we pick up our initial reading skills. And then it just kind of stops, unfortunately, where people aren't taught to upgrade their reading skills. So think of this session and the training that we're doing as a way to upgrade your skills. Actually, when we measure your reading speed, some of you might find that you're already above average. And if that's the case, great, we're going to work on making more gains. And even if you're below average or average, we can make improvements. I don't care where you're starting out. The main goal is progress. That's all that matters. So one of the old reading habits we got to change is something called fixation. And fixation is something your eyes do. They fixate on one word, next word, and so on and so forth. And we keep going one by one. The problem with fixation is that you're perfectly capable of reading groups of words. You can fixate on a group of words instead of just one word at a time. And actually, you already read groups of words when you are driving. Let's say you were taking a road trip to New York City, and you see an exit sign that says New York City. You're fixated on the road, right, with your eyes, and then you fixate on the sign for like a split of a second and then back on the road so you don't crash. But when you fixate on that sign, with your peripheral vision, you can see all 3 words in one single glance. You don't fixate on New York City, it's just New York City in one chunk. So this is something we got to adapt to the page or the screen, because most people, if they had the words New York City buried in the middle of some paragraph, most people would read that as and fixate on New York City one by one. So this is one of the habits we want to work on changing. Another old reading habit, we kind of touched on this, is regression, and that is rereading material. We've all been guilty of this, where you read a sentence, it didn't make sense, you read it again. Sometimes it's a whole page. They have a name for this. They actually call it mindless reading. Mindless reading is when you're reading and you're progressing through the text line by line, maybe even page by page, but you're not getting anything. Like you're thinking of something totally different while you're quote unquote reading. That's what they call mindless reading. And of course, it's a big problem with focus. We need to find ways to improve our focus while we're reading. Also, we want to cut back on the amount of time we spend rereading when it's not necessary. I'll give you an example. And basically, I'm just going to say it straightforward here. You should never reread one sentence. And here's why. Because it's true, maybe I didn't understand the sentence, that's possible, but it's also true, and this happens very often, that maybe this sentence doesn't make sense until you read the next sentence or the rest of the paragraph. So that happens pretty often when you're reading. You don't always get all the information in a single sentence. It's kind of like when you watch a movie. When you watch a movie at the beginning, maybe the first 5 minutes, you're not really sure what's going on, right? You ever watch a movie like that? Do you stop the movie after 5 minutes and say, you know what, I didn't understand any of that. Maybe if I rewatch from the beginning, I'll understand it better. You don't do that because you know how movies are. Or if you're in a movie theater, you just can't do it. There's no rewind function there. So you just kind of go with the flow. And later on in the movie or at the end, the beginning starts to make more sense. And the same thing happens with reading. What I would suggest is if you read a sentence and it didn't make sense, try to push through the rest of the paragraph. When you get to the end of that paragraph, if you're still shaky on your comprehension, then definitely go back and reread. But don't do it after one single sentence. Now, there is a third old reading habit, and this is one of the harder ones to change. You probably remember when you were little, you had to get up in front of class, you had to read out loud. You probably remember this. I call it a dreadful experience because I used to hate reading out loud. Part of that is because English is not my first language. My first language is Polish. And both of my parents are immigrants from Poland. I grew up speaking only Polish until I was like 5 or 6. And I used to hate reading out loud because I was always messing up on words because I was just learning the language. The good news is you don't have to read out loud forever. Eventually, your teacher says, instead of reading out loud, do what? Say the words silently in your head. And they have a name for this. They call it subvocalization. Subvocalization is basically that voice you hear in your head while you're reading. So you've probably noticed that you hear voices in your head while you're reading, and it doesn't mean you're crazy. It's common that people hear their own voice while they're reading. And by the way, if you're hearing other voices in your head, that's a separate issue. But when you hear your voice, they call that subvocalization. It places some restrictions on your reading speed. And we want to change this habit. And actually, we're going to talk a little more about it. But since we've mentioned, your reading speed, we haven't really measured it yet. So let's measure your reading speed right now. What I'd like you to do is go to the link you see on the screen here, irisreading.com/YTS, and you'll find a file, speedtest1.pdf. It looks like this. But refer to that file. Make sure you have that downloaded and opened up on your screen. We're going to read for a quick minute. I say a quick minute because that'll just give us a chance to measure our actual reading speed. So I've got a timer here with me, and let me just put the batteries in. We're going to be reading for a minute. You'll hear my timer go off like that at the end of the minute, and I want you to just read the way you normally would. If for some reason you have trouble accessing this file, because this link, it forwards to a Dropbox link. For some reason you can't access Dropbox and download those PDFs, I'm going to have it on the next slide, as you see here. Hopefully you can read from the size of the text here. If you can't, don't worry, I will disable my webcam. So I'm going to disable it right now, so goodbye. That should give you a little more screen space. Also, I will, make sure that you've got this maximized. If you're just watching the video, you want to maximize your screen. If for some reason you can't read this text over here, if it's not legible or if it's too small, make sure you download the file so you can have it at a size that is easy to read. And we're just going to read for a minute to begin with. I want you to read for good comprehension the way you normally would. At the end of the minute, you'll hear my timer go off, and at that point, we'll figure out what your speed was. Okay? So hopefully you have that article in front of you. Here it is on the screen. Go ahead and begin reading. All right, that was a minute of reading. Hopefully, you can see where you've stopped. Maybe make a little mark there if you have it printed out, or you don't have to make a mark. You can also just take a look at the line where you stopped, and that'll help you figure out what your speed was. So if you stopped on the word even over here, that would be 249. Maybe you stopped on the word limit, unlimited here, that would be 193. By the way, you may have stopped somewhere in between. If that was the case, let's say you stopped over here. Well, you see 250, but if you didn't finish the line, basically what you got to do is just subtract the words you didn't read. So if I didn't read these last two words and I stopped on this word, well, then I would subtract these two words from 206. Or if I stopped over here on the word response, I would just add 1, 2, 3, 4 words to the previous number, and that would give me 225. Write that number down somewhere. Make sure you know where you stopped. It's important that we keep track of our numbers here, because how else can we measure improvement? Write that down. I'll show you the average in a moment here, but before I do that, if you could do me a big favor and enter what your speed was in the survey. So you can enter your speed at irisreading.com/S1. If you could please go to that link, I would greatly appreciate it. I'm putting that in the chat here. So enter your speed there. Give you a few moments to do that, or you can scan that QR code. That's another way you can do it. Also, it asks you to estimate your comprehension. What this means is this is really just like a very subjective, what was your comprehension like? If you felt like it was pretty good, you might say 80% or 90%. If you felt like it was so-so, you might say 70 or 60. If it was bad, you might put 53.2 if you felt like it was bad, but you wanted to be precise. Put a number there, make sure you go to that link, and please, we like to aggregate this data over time. So I would appreciate if you enter your information there. Oh, and I see something in the chat. I'm from India. I like your videos, super videos. Please upload more. Of course, we will work on uploading more. So definitely subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're just at Iris Reading, and that's where you could find us. So here's the average. Average reading speed, 150 to 250. Maybe you're in that range. Maybe you're above that range. Maybe you're below that range. Feel free to share your speed if you want. I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but you can. If you want to share it in the chat or the comments below, by all means, feel free. We're going to measure your reading speed again later on, but this is the average, and I want you to know a few things about this average reading speed. First off, it's based on material that is medium level in terms of difficulty. I think all of us would agree this material here is not extremely difficult, and it's not very, very easy either. It's not a children's book, right? And it's also not advanced level physics. So if we have to categorize materials into 3 levels, easy, medium, hard, this would be considered medium broadly. This is an average for medium level material. So just keep that in mind. Obviously, your reading speed would drop if you were reading something technical, and your reading speed would obviously go higher if it was something easier to read. So you really want to think of your reading speed not as a single number, but more like a range, right? Your range might be here. Maybe you're reading technical material down at 100 words a minute. Maybe you're reading the easy stuff at like 300 words a minute. And average material, medium level, might be somewhere in between, like 200s. So you have a range. I want to help you move that range higher. That's the goal. Or you can think of it this way. We want to take that range and we want to expand it. So what that means is you'll still be able to read slowly when you choose to do that. And there are situations where you should read slowly. There are certain types of text that are meant to be read slow, and that's fine. And then there's other types of information where you can read it faster, assuming you can keep up with those rates. But again, think of your reading speed like a range, and we're going to work on improving it. Also, one other thing about this average. It used to be a little higher 40 years ago. It used to be 250 to 350. So it's dropped. I think there are reasons for it. Part of it is the ever continuous shrinking of the attention spans. Also, we're reading a lot more now on the screen than we were 40 years ago, right? So that plays a part. People tend to read a little slower on the screen. One other thing I want you to know about this average is it doesn't really take into account education level. So as you would imagine, for college-educated adults. The average is a little bit higher. It's 200 to 300 for college-educated adults. So there's something to keep in mind. And also on the screen, people tend to read slower. It can be actually a lot more frustrating to be reading on the screen because of all the distractions. There was a study done a few years ago, and they found the average was closer to about 136 in terms of reading speed on the screen. Now, I want to circle back to this this habit, subvocalization. If you're saying every word in your head, doesn't that mean that you're going to read as fast as you talk? And there's a limit, right, to how fast you can talk. I mean, some people talk faster than others, but there's an average reading speed and there's an average talking speed. What is the average talking speed? If you took a big sample, like thousands of people, and you measured everyone's talking speed, guess what the average would be? It turns out the average talking speed is this, 150 to 250. It's exactly the same as the average reading speed. Why? It's because of this habit. If you're saying all the words in your head, then you'll basically read as fast as you talk, and that is part of the problem. There's that limit. You don't want to read as fast as you talk. What about your thinking speed? What's faster, your thinking speed or your talking speed? I think all of us would agree we can think much faster than we can talk. Actually, our tagline here at Iris Reading is reading at the speed of thought. And that's because you're perfectly capable of reading faster than your talking speed. So that's why we got to change this habit and the others. Let's get into some details on this. First, let's work on improving our focus, because it's something we all have to struggle with. Concentration. Like this person here looks like he's just spacing out while he's reading. So that happens to us too, right? So let's talk about how we can improve this. And easiest way to get better focus while you're reading is to start using, when you're reading on the page, an actual book, start using your hand or pen or your finger as a guide. So what I mean by that is just going smoothly. I mean, I wouldn't be reading like this. I'd be reading with the text in front of me, but just to show you, you'd be dragging your hands smoothly across the page, or your finger, that's fine too. Or some people prefer to use a pen. Whatever you're most comfortable with. The reason why you want to do this is because your eyes are naturally attracted to motion. Anything that moves around naturally gets our attention. It's actually how we're wired as human beings. And there's some science behind why you would want to do this. And by the way, I should acknowledge one thing. Obviously, when you're reading on the screen, I understand nobody wants to be dragging their finger across the screen. Or if you have a touch screen like your phone or a tablet, it's not going to work that well. We'll talk about reading on the screen separately, but anytime you have paper-based material, that's where we want to be using a pacer, hand, finger, or pen. And some of the science behind it has to do with your eye movements. So there are two types of eye movements that all human beings have, a saccadic eye movement and a smooth pursuit eye movement. What are the differences between these two? The saccadic eye movement, the smooth pursuit eye movement, this happens when things are not moving around. So, when things are moving around. If I'm looking out the window and there's a car driving down the road and I'm tracking that car with my eyes would move in what's called a smooth pursuit. I'm going to show you what that looks like in a moment. Now, a saccadic eye movement is happening when there is no movement. So, for example, I'm in a room right now, nothing's moving around, everything is stationary except me. And if I'm just looking around the room like this, my eyes would move in a saccadic fashion because I'm not tracking anything that's moving around. Now, let me show you what that looks like close up. Apologies for the creepy eyeball here, but I want you to see what a saccadic eye movement looks like. This is how your eyes would move if you're reading like this. If you're reading like this and you're not like using your hand, finger, or pen as a guide, if you're not creating motion on the page, then your eyes have to move kind of in a saccadic fashion, going word by word. It looks like this. You see those quick little stops? That's your eyes stopping to grab a word, next word, next word. Might be like a few words per line. Okay, let me show you a smooth pursuit. This happens when your eyes are actually tracking movement. It could be, again, you watching a car drive down the road. It could be you creating some motion on the page. This is how your eyes would move if they're tracking something that is moving around. Smooth pursuit. Very smooth, right? Or smoother than the previous eye movement. Let me show you them side by side. Saccadic on the left, when there's no movement. Smooth pursuit on the right, when there is movement. So this on the right would be someone using their hand or pen as a guide. The other side is kind of like how people would read traditionally. You can tell a big difference, right? Now, it just so turns out that the smooth pursuit eye movement lends itself to better focus. When I say that, I mean that you pay more attention to things that move around, so much so that your eyes actually move differently when something is moving around. So something to keep in mind when we're talking about using your hand, finger, or pen as a guide. But I do realize, like we said, it's not always practical, right? When you're reading on the screen, you've got to take maybe a different approach. I guess you could, like I have a pen here. The back of it, it has like a smooth end to it, this little clicky thing on the top. I don't know what it's actually called. I just call it a clicky thing. Anyway, so I could use that to like drag my pen across without messing up my screen, I guess. Or I could use my mouse, maybe. For me, it's not that convenient because my mouse pad, I'm on a laptop. It's not that large, so if I had an external mouse on the side, on the table, it would be easier for me to use a mouse as something to guide my eyes. But let's assume it's not practical. Maybe I got a touch screen. There's a different approach we can take. So let's take some sample reading material. And we're gonna go to The Onion for this text. I don't know if you're familiar with The Onion, but as you can see from their tagline up here, The Onion is America's finest news source. So that's where we're going to source our information. And we're going to take this article right here. So we have crypto-averse man would prefer investing in traditional stock market. He also doesn't understand. So we're going to read this article. Lucky for you, it's pretty short. And we're going to read through it using a program that we developed called Accelerator. Now, here's how this program works. This program basically takes text that you want to read, and what it'll do is it'll blink the words on the screen at whatever speed you set in the program. So we have some text here that's copy pasted from this article. We're going to click begin, and I want you to focus in the middle of the screen here. When I click read, this green button on the bottom, what's going to happen is it's going to be blinking the words on the screen. Now these are the first 3 words of the article. I want you to see if you can keep up the speed at which it's going to blink. You can change that in the settings, but I've got that set right now to 200 words per minute, which is around average, a little faster than average compared to the average reader on the screen. But let's see if you can keep up at 200 words a minute. So I'm going to disable my webcam here and just focus your attention in the middle of the screen. We're going to be reading this article right here. Crypto-averse man would prefer investing in traditional stock market. He also doesn't understand. Let's try it out. Here we go. All right, so that was 200 words per minute. And I know what some of you are thinking. You might be thinking, you know what? I could go faster than that. And let's try going faster than 200 words per minute. I mean, we could go faster than that. And even if you have trouble keeping up at a faster rate, it's still okay to practice at those faster speeds. So let's try going 250 words a minute instead, but we got to take some new material. Let's take this Onion article. Disney acquires all of America's children for $52 billion. I like the subheadline here. Ship them to us and we will do as we wish. Okay. Actually, this is the former CEO of Disney, Bob Chapek or Chapek. I don't know how to pronounce it. Anyway, so we've got this article. Again, another short article. This is just for demonstrative purposes. I copy paste, I hit begin. I'm going to bump up the speed from 200 in the settings to 250 words per minute. Now, some of you may have noticed when we were doing this, it was blinking 3 words at a time. You could change that in the settings to whatever you want, but I purposely set it to 3 just to demonstrate the point, to show you that you're perfectly capable of reading more than 1 word at a time. So let's try going 3 words at a time, 250 words per minute. See if you could still keep up. We're going to read through this article right here. Disney acquires all of America's children for $52 billion. Here we go. All right, so that was a quick article going a little faster. Let's try going even faster. Let's do 300 words a minute. And we'll take one more article from the Onion. World scientists admit they just don't like mice. So we're going to copy and paste that, put it in here. As you can see, we hit begin. By the way, there are some keyboard shortcuts at the bottom. You see down here? So we're going to use the up arrow key to increase the speed, but you could also use the down arrow key. The up and down, that's just to increase or decrease your speed by 25. If you need to go back, you hit the space bar to pause it. This is like your play and pause button. And then you could use the left arrow key to go back, or you could use the right arrow key to skip ahead. So you see some keyboard shortcuts down there. Let's see if we can go. I'm going to hit the up arrow key a couple times here. 1, 2, and you see it's at 300 words a minute. See if you can still keep up at 300 words per minute. We're going to go through this article right here. World scientists admit they just don't like mice. All right, here we go. Okay, so 300 words per minute. You may have been still keeping up, and if that's the case, great. Also, a few other things to note about this platform is there's other settings you can explore on your own. I'm not going to dive too deep into this. Maybe we'll do another session where we go very, very deeply into how to optimize this program to improve your reading. But I want to jump back to the slides because we've got still a lot more to cover here today. And if I asked you this question here, oh, by the way, let me back up here. Here's where you could find the program. If you go to accelerator.com, that is where you could always find the latest updates on this. We are working on turning this into an iPhone app as well. I'm going to just post the link in the chat here, Accelerator. I actually got to post it in 2 chat areas because we're also live streaming on LinkedIn. So you can find that there. It's free. This is a speed reading tool that we created, and I hope you find it helpful. It's a good training tool, and there are ways you can optimize this to increase your speed when you're reading on the screen. Now, how do you get better at anything? I think all of us would agree the answer is practice, right? When it comes to practice, how do we go about practicing to improve our reading speed? There's an easy way to do it. Give me a moment here, 1 second. An easy way to improve and practice your speed is by doing these things called speed drills. So speed drills, the whole point of a speed drill is to purposely go faster than you would normally read. And the way we're going to do that is by taking material you already read. Remember this article, The Age of Distraction? We read this article for a minute, 60 seconds. You got to a certain point. I want you to get to that same point from the beginning in 40 seconds. So you got to go faster, and it shouldn't be too hard because you already read this. Well, the first few lines or first few paragraphs, you already read. We read for 1 minute. What I want you to do is what we call a speed drill, and the goal, again, is to purposely go faster than normal. Easiest way to do that is to reread what we already read. So we're going to get used to seeing words faster. I want you to get to the line that you read up to, that you originally read up to. Maybe it was here, maybe it was here, maybe it was up here. You got to get to that line or further. So if you get to the line early, if there's still time left, because I'm going to be timing you with my timer here. If there's still time left, you can just continue reading, go back into normal reading mode. But I want you to, at the very least, get to the line that you read up to. Let's try this out. I got 40 seconds on the clock. I want you to start at the beginning. And one other thing I should mention, if it's convenient for you to use, your hand, your finger, or a pen as a guide, then do it. However, I understand for some of you, if you're joining us on a touch screen, or if it's just not practical to do that, you don't have to, but at the very least, you should be moving your eyes faster. But if you have this printed out, definitely use your hand, finger, or pen as a guide. Think of it as a hand-eye coordination exercise. So let's try this out. I'm giving you 40 seconds. You got to start at the beginning, and you got to get through the material you read in 40 seconds. Ready, set, and go. All right, that was 40 seconds. If you got there, great. Now we're going to do 35 seconds. I'm going to cut the time down. We're going to go a little faster. Again, start from the beginning, and you got to get through all the text that you originally read in 1 minute in 35 seconds. So go a little bit faster. 35 seconds is on the clock. Start back at the top and make sure you fly through that text. We're basically going to skim what we previously read. All right, a little faster. Ready, set, and go. Hey, that was 35 seconds. Did you make it? Hopefully you did. Let's go to 30 seconds. A little bit faster. 30 seconds is on the clock. Again, make sure you're going faster than you would normally read. At this pace, 30 seconds, you got to go at about double your normal reading speed. Because remember, we read to that point, wherever it was for you. That was 60 seconds of reading. Now I'm asking you to get through that in 30 seconds, half the time. So you got to go double your normal speed. It doesn't mean we're reading at double our normal speed. It doesn't really count because we're reading the same thing, but we're skimming the text at double our normal speed. So let's get through it. 30 seconds from the top. Ready, set, and go. All right, that was 30 seconds. If you made it there, great. Let's make the drill a little more challenging. Instead of just getting to the line that you read up to, wherever that was, I want you to get from the beginning all the way to the end. You see, I want you to get through the entire passage. I'm going to give you more time. I'm going to give you a very generous minute and 30 seconds. It's not too generous, but I purposely am giving you a shortened period of time here. When we're doing speed drills, don't equate this to normal reading. Normal reading is where we want as much comprehension as possible. When we're doing a speed drill, the priority right now is speed. I want you to purposely go a lot faster than usual. So that means even through the material that's down here that you have not yet read, I want you to fly through it. I want you to speed through that material. Again, just think of this like skimming. Your comprehension is going to be off. It's going to drop like a rock. Why? Because you're going a lot faster than you would normally read. And especially since we haven't read any of that, I'm assuming you haven't gotten to this point yet. So you're starting at the top. I'm putting a minute 30 on the clock. Just to give you an idea of some pacing, I want you to, well, I'll give you a heads up on time when we get halfway. Halfway through the time, I'll just turn on my mic and say halfway. And at that point, you should know that you should be about halfway there. And if you're not, go a little faster. So let's get to the end of the passage before time is up, a minute 30. If you finish early, just go back to the beginning and keep doing this until time is up. Let's get our practice in. Ready, set, and go. Halfway. Okay, that was a minute and 30 seconds. If you got there, very good. If you didn't get there, here's what usually happens. The reason why people don't get there. They start off fast, right? Because they already read all this. So they start off fast. And then eventually, after they pass like the line that they read up to, they're like, oh, this article is kind of interesting. Let me slow it down. No, don't do that. Keep going fast. You want to get through all this text, even though your comprehension's not that great. So you got now one more drill. Let's do one more. A minute and 15 seconds. I really want you to push yourself to get from the top to the very bottom. 1 minute and 15 seconds. Let's try it out, see if you can do it. Ready, set, and go. Halfway. All right, that was 1:15. If you got there, very good. Now, let's go back to normal reading. When I say normal reading, I mean with comprehension. So take a look at the other file, speedtest2.pdf. It's found over here in this handouts link, irisreading.com/YTS. Go ahead and find that article, and I'm going to have it displayed on my screen right here. Again, the link is irisreading.com/YTS. We're going to go back to normal reading, and by that I mean reading with comprehension. I want you to understand what you're reading, so that means you got to slow it down, not too slow, but not too fast. Go at a speed that's comfortable enough for you to understand the material. And we're going to read for 1 minute, and then I will stop you. So hopefully you have this article in front of you, or maybe you're reading from my shared screen. Everyone should be ready. Okay, ready, set, and go. And stop. Okay, take a look at the line where you stopped. Let's figure out what your speed was. And again, those numbers on the side will help you figure that out. And let's go ahead and take note of what that speed was. Write it down somewhere, or if I'm curious to know if you made an improvement, you could let me know in the chat or in the comments below. Made an improvement, great. That's why we have this success baby here. And make sure you add that to the survey. Again, irisreading.com/S1. If you click on that link, that's where you could find the survey. Not click, you can't click on the link on the video, but if you go to it from the chat, I posted it in the chat, comments below, you can find that, or scan the QR code. Add your numbers there. I'd really appreciate it if you put that information there, because that helps us aggregate a lot of that data. We like to keep track of it. In fact, we have thousands and thousands of submissions there. So take note of it. I want you to be aware of how these drills work. If you made an improvement, awesome. We want to make more improvements, so I want you to be aware of how these drills are actually working in your favor. So it's kind of like being on the highway. When you're driving on the highway, you're going a bit faster than usual, right? Let's say you're going 70, 80 miles an hour. How does it feel when you get off the highway? Doesn't it feel kind of slow? Like if you've been going 70 or 80 miles an hour for a long period of time, you get off the highway and all of a sudden now it feels like you're going extremely slow. Sometimes you're still going 40 or 50 and you don't even realize it. So that's how these drills are meant to work, where when you're doing the drills, you're purposely going a lot faster than you would normally read. And then you get off the highway. You go back to normal reading. You reset. But what you'll find a lot of times is you're going a little bit faster than usual, but it doesn't feel that fast because you got used to practicing way faster when you were doing drills. So that's the idea here. Now, one thing we haven't covered that I want to cover before we wrap up here is, well, what about comprehension? How can we improve comprehension? A simple way to do that is to change up your speed, slowing down and speeding up at key points. So for example, just about any kind of text you're reading. I've got some sample material here, a short article. This is not one of the materials in the Dropbox folder, but this article, India's Skills Famine, where should we slow down? A good rule of thumb is to slow down on the first sentence of a paragraph and then speed up. Slow down on the first sentence, speed up here. Slow down, speed up. You do this over and over again, and that's how you can build up your speed with time and build up your comprehension. So why would we slow down on the first sentence of a paragraph? I think it's pretty obvious to you, right? The first sentence is usually what? Main idea, right? Not always, or some people call it a topic sentence. That's how we were taught to write. So if we're reading this article, India's skills famine, if you look at the first sentence, or the first paragraph here, I'll zoom in, reads, the economic transformation of India is one of the great business stories of our time. Sound like a main idea? Very straightforward. We take that and now we're trying to run with it. Let's go a little faster. We go a little faster. We get to the end of the paragraph. We slow it down over here because there's a first sentence. But India has run into a surprising hitch on its way to superpower status. Its inexhaustible supply of workers is becoming exhausted. Another main idea. Let's take that and run with it. Let's go a little faster here. When I say go a little faster, I don't mean a lot faster, just a little bit faster. And when I say slow down, just a little bit slower, not extremely slow. So here we have a sentence. How is this possible in a country that every year produces 2.5 million college graduates and 400,000 engineers? Interesting. Now we speed up. There was a time when many economists believed that post-secondary education didn't have much impact on economic growth. Interesting. The irony of the current situation is that India was once considered to be overeducated. That's weird. Like, how could a country be overeducated? That's a good thing. Look at the next paragraph. Since the Second World War, the countries that have made successful leaps from developing to developed status have all poured money, public and private, into education. And here's the last paragraph. India has taken tentative steps to remedy its skills famine. The current government has made noises about doubling spending on education, and a host of new colleges and universities have sprung up since the mid-1990s. Interesting. Now we speed up. I wanted to read all those first sentences out loud to you just to demonstrate the point, something we all know. It's almost always going to be the main idea or topic sentence, followed by details. But changing your speed forces you to pay attention. That's how our mind works. We pay attention to fluctuations. When I say fluctuations, think of it this way. When somebody's speaking, have you ever had a teacher or professor that spoke in a monotone voice like this? If somebody speaks in a monotone voice, it is very hard to pay attention, right? Because the fluctuations in their voice volume pretty much stays the same. The fluctuation in the speed of their voice, a monotone voice goes at about the same speed, rather than, the way most people talk. Sometimes they go a little faster, other times we slow down, we pause. But a monotone voice, the reason it's boring is because you don't have those fluctuations in speed or volume. So the same thing happens because those fluctuations help you. The changing of speed tricks you into paying attention. So most people when they're reading, if you're reading at exactly the same speed on every line, that's like a monotone voice. If you're going the same speed, your mind will wander off. But if you're changing up your speed constantly, it makes you a much more dynamic reader, and it makes you pay more attention, and thus you get better comprehension. Now, another reason I read the first sentence of each paragraph out loud is I wanted to demonstrate another very important point. And it's one of the main things you want to do if you're ever going to be if you're trying to read faster and get comprehension. You always want to make sure that you inspect your material first. When I say inspect, I mean get familiar with something before you read it. How you inspect the material depends on how it's structured. Like a one-page article like this, the way I inspect that, before reading this whole article, I would read the first sentence of each and every paragraph first. Then I'll read the article. But you get the idea. Like if I asked you to read this article right now, wouldn't you read it faster than normal? Because you kind of have an edge, right? It's about India, shortage of skilled labor. They're also stressing education and the economy. They're talking about these things. We don't have details yet, but we know at a high level what it's going to be about. So if you're going to read this now, you'll read it faster with better comprehension. That's the key behind inspecting. Now, you might be reading something more complex. What if you have to deal with something very technical, like a textbook chapter, a journal article, something that's like 20, 30, or 50 or more pages? Well, the way you inspect is going to be different. I would not read the first sentence of each paragraph. Instead, if I'm inspecting a chapter or something technical, I'm going to be reading the introduction, the headings and subheadings, boldface words, anything in italics, titles of charts, tables, diagrams, the conclusion. By the way, some chapters will have questions at the end. I'm going to read those questions now. And then I'll read the chapter. So here's an example. We have a chapter from a finance textbook, goals and governance of the firm. We have this little intro here. I'd read the whole intro, and then I'd read my head. You see where the arrows are going? That's where my eyes are going to go. Notice headings, boldface words, subheadings. Next page. Nothing pops off the page here except the table. I'm not going to read the whole table. I'm just going to read the title of the table. Next page, subheadings, boldface words, and I keep going page by page. At the end, I'll read my conclusion, then I'll jump back to the beginning. We already read this, so I'm going to start here and read for detail now. And that's how we can get better comprehension. That's how we can get better speed when we're reading. And this leads me to what we would call the IRIS method, which is really an acronym for how you would approach material. And that's the name of our organization, but it stands for inspecting first, reading next, and then when you're done reading, inquiring about what you just read. When I say inquire, I mean asking questions. Questions help focus the mind. Questions could be things like, all right, what are the biggest takeaways from what I just read? Or questions could be, what's going to be on the test? Or what do I need to memorize? Which leads us to the storage step. How am I going to store this information? Now, like I said earlier in the session, we do have courses on memorization. So if you're interested in that topic, go to the website, irisreading.com, click on courses, and you can see the advanced level courses we have that dive deep into memorization. That's what happens at the end of this process, what you want to do. But you could also do a speed drill at the end of this process. The way that works is basically you're trying to see words at double your normal speed. Remember the drills we did earlier? You could do them at the end of this process. So what that looks like, if you're an average reader, around 200 words a minute, you want to practice around 400. So eventually 250 becomes your new normal reading speed. If you're already reading at 250, you practice at 500. So you can get to 300 and so on and so forth. Remember I said kind of like being on the highway. If you're going 70 miles an hour, eventually, 40 miles an hour won't feel that fast. Or in this case, 700 words a minute, now 400 words per minute doesn't feel that fast. And I'm getting comprehension too. So you could do these drills in this process, but you got to time yourself. When you're reading, let's say you read a chapter and it took you 20 minutes. Okay, your drill is going to be 10 minutes. Or if you read for 12 minutes, your drill is going to be 6 minutes. Maybe you read a really short article, only 4 minutes of reading. Okay, fine. I'm going to do a 2-minute drill, which is basically just skimming over what you read at double the normal speed, or you're giving yourself half the time. You could even do those speed drills with that accelerator program. So as far as storing goes, again, look into some of the courses we have on our website. And by the way, if you want some free supplemental materials, shoot me an email. My email is just paul@irisreading.com. If you like some of the passages we read earlier, they're extracted from this book, Focus, A Simplicity Manifesto in the Age of Distraction. The author's given us permission to freely distribute the PDF of this book. It's a quick read. It's around 100 pages, but very practical advice in there. I think it's very useful if you're trying to improve your focus. Shoot me an email, let me know you were in the session, and I'll reply with the PDF to that book. Also, if you want to take advantage of our advanced courses on whether it's speed reading, comprehension, maybe you're good with your speed, but you want solid comprehension, or you're trying to memorize information. We have a course for that. We have courses on note-taking, personal productivity. If you go to the website, irisreading.com/courses, just enter the code Paul, that's my name, and you'll get 30% off. So wanted to give you that offer as a thank you for joining us in today's session. And don't forget that we are going to be posting more content on our YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe there. We're just at Iris Reading. And if you want to connect with me personally, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram. You see the links right there. Let me know you were in the session, and I'm happy to connect with you there. I hope you found today's session helpful. If you like what we're doing, you can actually reach out to us, and we'd be more than happy to do something at your company or school. We've worked with employees at NASA, the Army, the Navy, Google, LinkedIn, a lot of different places where not just the corporate level, but also at the university level. So if you want us to do something for your student group or your department, feel free to reach out to us. But thank you so much for attending. I hope you found today's session helpful. Have a great rest of the day. Take care.